So it's been about 2 months since the last installment of this series, and I thought we'd like to revisit it. All of these are going to be coming from the comment section of the last video, so if you want to be featured in a future installment of the series, please leave your unpopular opinions below. The way it works is I show you an unpopular opinion, I give my thoughts on it, and I give it a rating. So let's just get to the first one. Okay, so the first opinion is from a friend of the channel, Enchanted Essays, who gives 2 opinions, but I'm going to focus on the first, which is the first Paddington is better than the second. Now, I'm going to leave that whole explanation up while I'm talking to you so you can read it, but in general, I'm partial to agreeing with this one. As they said, both films are practically perfect. They execute exactly what they set out to do, and I do think it's kind of absurd that the second film gets all this crazy amount of praise when both films are perfectly beautiful times. I do kind of prefer the first film because I love the stuff in Peru, the introduction of the character to the family, and I just find it very heartwarming. The second is great, don't get me wrong, and I think they're basically on equal footing, but if I were to just watch one of them at any given point, it's almost always going to be the first, so yeah, good opinion. I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10. Our next opinion is from Arel Bauer. I definitely butchered that name, I'm sorry, but they say that Mario 2023 is definitely the best movie based off a video game we've had so far. Okay, so I actually also kind of agree with this, and I also agree this opinion is going to become less and less unpopular, if it even is right now, but I'd say it is just because it is such a fresh opinion. But in terms of video game movie adaptations, we don't have much that's great. We have the 2 Sonic films, which are pretty good in my opinion, and Detective Pikachu, which I have a huge soft spot for, but otherwise everything else just kind of reeks unless you get some kind of ironic enjoyment out of it. If shows were involved in this opinion, it would be absolutely wrong, but just in the cinematic sphere, this is very valid. I mean, it's a relatively new movie. I've only seen it twice, but it's honestly really enjoyable. The animation is gorgeous, they translated the video game world to the big screen phenomenally, which is a difficult thing to do. The voice cast isn't actually as egregiously awful as we suspected when it was revealed, and I like where they took the story. I actually did a video on this film, so go and check that out if you care, but yeah, it's between this, Detective Pikachu, and the 2 Sonic films for the best, and I would feel okay saying Mario is the top dog, so I'll give this opinion a 7 out of 10. Then we have Bully Maguire, who says the Mission Impossible franchise is by far the best film franchise. Well, I actually did a best film franchise movie bracket and Mission Impossible didn't win, so that's where I land on that. But I will say there are some very good films in this franchise and I do respect anyone who thinks this. I haven't seen Dead Reckoning yet, but overall I'd give this opinion a 5 out of 10. I don't agree, but I don't hate it at all. Then Lil Hallway, who also has a Bully Maguire profile picture, says Spirited Away is great, but its greatness is far overblown. And yeah, now of course, Spirited Away is a brilliant movie. It's beautifully animated, the story is a great example of taking old concepts and evolving them for new times, and yeah, its reputation precedes it. However, it spawned the worst fanbase ever, and I think that fanbase have massively overblown its quality. But in my opinion, it's certainly not the best Studio Ghibli. I'd probably say that Howl's Moving Castle, Grave of the Fireflies, Princess Mononoke, and maybe even Kiki's Delivery Service are all of equal quality, if not better than Spirited Away. Regardless, still a really good film, and I'd give the opinion a decent 6 out of 10. It's a good opinion. Now we have H. Dominguez, who says Disney should re-release their original movies exactly as it is, but update the hand-drawn animation to cute computer animation. And then adds, let's face it, the kiddos can't enjoy 2D as much as we older people. So I think they're talking about the live-action adaptations and instead just redo those films in 3D animation, which I can see where they're coming from. It would be an absolute step up from the live-action adaptations, but I disagree wholeheartedly with this entire statement. For one, the original films don't need an update. They're timeless classics for a reason, and also, the claim that children in the modern day don't enjoy 2D animation as much as 3D is insane. The only reason you could have this opinion is because there's just simply more 3D animation around. But think of some of the biggest children's TV shows like Peppa Pig, Arthur, and SpongeBob. I mean, anyone that has been around any child under the age of like 7 knows how much them fuckers love Bluey. I think if you show children now The Lion King, Aladdin, Mulan, The Iron Giant, any amount of Ghibli films, and even recents like Wolfwalkers, you'll see the kids enjoy them just as much as we did back then. My niece is honestly obsessed with Princess and the Frog, which is the last Disney 2D animated film, and it came out long before she was born. Children haven't changed, just what we exposed them to has. 3D animation was shiny and new and popular in the mid-late 90s and early 2000s, so all these companies adopted it and it just never reverted back. It's become the industry standard, but that does not mean that children only enjoy that. So I do disagree, although I agree 3D animated updates would be marginally better than the live action ones. So overall, 3 out of 10. Okay, so next up we have Nadir. I'm sorry for also killing your name. You're around a lot, I should probably know how to pronounce it by now, but they bring us 3 opinions, and I got opinions on all of them, so lightning round. The first opinion is, Silence of the Lambs is massively overrated. The only great thing about it is Anthony Hopkins / Hannibal, and he has like 15 minutes of screen time. The rest of the film is just a mid-crime movie. I disagree to the grossest extent. I think even without Anthony Hopkins, this film is incredible. The mystery unfolds beautifully. Jodie Foster as Clarice is honestly on par with Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal, which is my hot take here. The night vision scene is genuinely chilling, and overall I love the film. Obviously, Hannibal is the most iconic part and probably the highlight for most people, if not pretty much every person, but I think the film is still fantastic, so 2 out of 10. Second opinion is John Wick is the only franchise where every new movie was better than the last one. And honestly, yeah, I can't think of a single other franchise that is on a constant uphill. Granted, I have yet to see John Wick 4, but from the 3 that I have seen, I can confidently say each get progressively better. I don't know another series that has done that, so 8 out of 10 opinion. You've redeemed yourself. And the third opinion is T2 Trainspotting is the best legacy sequel. I think it's a great legacy sequel and an example of how to get one right, but I do personally prefer Mad Max Fury Road, Creed, Scream from 2022 and Blade Runner 2049 more, so I'm not fully on board, but T2 Trainspotting is a banger, so that's going to get you a 5 out of 10, overall bringing your comment score to an average of 5 out of 10 I think, but I'll bump it to a 6 because I like you. Next we have I Am Ryan Gosling, by the way, loved you in Barbie recently. He has a few, so another lightning round. He says Evil Dead is the greatest horror franchise of all time. Again, according to my bracket I disagree, but I do think it's the most consistent horror franchise of all time. And I respect any Evil Dead fan, so this gets a 7 out of 10. He then says Denzel Washington is an average actor and gets too much praise. You're on crack. I actually think he's the greatest actor to ever live, so 1 out of 10. Go see American Gangster and Malcolm X and reevaluate, sir. Third, he says Solo is by far my favourite Star Wars movie. I respect this. I think it's nowhere near as good as Empire or A New Hope or The Last Jedi or The Force Awakens or Revenge of the Sith, but regardless, I respect it. I love seeing Solo get some love, so 5 out of 10. Fourth, he says Breaking Bad is great but overrated. I agree, it's one of the best shows of all time, but it isn't really the best, maybe not even top 5, so 6 out of 10. And finally, he says The Dark Knight is great but nothing special, and The Batman is better in pretty much every way, including the performances. Now, I nearly agree with this. One, the performances, no, because Heath Ledger. But I don't think The Dark Knight is as great as people think. I don't even think it's the best in its trilogy, but I'm not sure if I'd say The Batman is better either. I have them basically equal and both underneath Batman Returns. So 5 out of 10, bringing your average score to like 5 out of 10 again, but I'll bump it to a 6 for being a returning sub and I like you. Our third lightning round comes to us from Dexter, who says, firstly, the John Wick franchise is overrated as fuck. I disagree. I think it's perfectly rated, not under or over. It's the best action series to come out of the 2010s in my opinion. However, some people do definitely overblow it, and there I can see where you're coming from, so 4 out of 10. Then Inglourious Bastards is good but not Tarantino's best by a long shot, which is an agreeable statement. I do plan on doing a Tarantino ranking at some point, but spoiler alert, this will not hit the top 3, so 7 out of 10. Rogue One and The Last Jedi are top tier Star Wars films. Wholeheartedly agree, I love both of these movies and I think they're severely underrated in the general scope of Star Wars. Also, the final Darth Vader scene in Rogue One is fucking sick and one of the best Star Wars scenes of all time, so 9 out of 10, highest rated opinion of the video so far. And lastly, he says Eyes Wide Shut is Kubrick's masterpiece, and though I don't think it's his best film or my favourite of his, I lean more towards this opinion than say 2001 A Space Odyssey or whatever other films people usually say are Kubrick's best. I think Eyes Wide Shut is criminally misjudged, so 7 out of 10, bringing your average total to like a 7 out of 10. Then from Yeez, we got a bunch of opinions, but only one really being film related, so I'm only going to respond to that one, but I'll put them all on screen in case you're curious and want to respond to them. So the one I'm responding to is opinion 3, which is the MCU peaked at Captain America the Winter Soldier and died with Avengers Infinity War. I disagree for the fact that I don't think Winter Soldier is actually as good as people say, and the best MCU film is a fight between Guardians 1 and 2, Avengers Infinity War, Ragnarok, and my sleeper pick, Multiverse of Madness. I think the MCU should have ended at Endgame, but it's whatever, so overall giving the opinion a 4 out of 10. Then H. Dominguez to bring us another stinker, which is Scream 5 sucked and Scream 4 is a better alternate and ahead of its time by 10 years. Now, I love every single movie in this franchise, I do, and Scream 4 is an absolute banger and deserves far more respect. But as someone who was massively skeptical of Scream 5, I gotta say it fucking goes. Scream 6 is better in my opinion, but I love what they did with Scream 2022 and I think Wes Craven would have loved it, so yeah, 3 out of 10. Lastly, we're going to end on a lightning round before getting into some of my unpopular opinions. From Law FP2EC, who brings us 3 opinions. The first being, Oldboy has one of the worst and weirdest plot twists ever and I hate that movie. This opinion is straight bozo juice. Oldboy goes so fucking hard and the twist ending, though I won't spoil it here, goes just as hard in my opinion. Top tier film and ending, so 3 out of 10. Next up we have the Lord of the Rings trilogy is absolutely boring and probably the most overrated franchise ever. I absolutely love fantasy franchises like The Witcher and Game of Thrones, but Lord of the Rings is nothing compared to them. This is also some bozo juice. Lord of the Rings clears Game of Thrones and The Witcher couldn't see that trilogy with a NASA telescope, so no, bad, 2 out of 10. And lastly, Stanley Kubrick is mediocre at best. No movie I watch from him is great, he has some good ones but most are okay or bad, with The Shining being the worst one. Blasphemy. I don't even need to address this too hard, but yeah, 2 out of 10. Your average score being a fucking stinky out of 10, but I will say you brought possibly the spiciest unpopular opinions to the video, so for that, you get crowned the hot take king or whatever. Congrats, my man. Now, normally I end these videos doing a quick lightning round of my own unpopular opinions, so let's get them over and done with. I think Barbie is great, but not even a top 10 release from this year so far. I think The Village by M. Night Shyamalan is a fantastic film and stupidly overhated. Ari Aster isn't even a top 5 contemporary horror director and is yet to make a film better than his first. Misery is the best Stephen King adaptation. Though Aliens is the best Alien sequel, and in my opinion the best Alien film, Alien Covenant is the second best Alien sequel and is not even close. Jurassic World is a great movie and people have only turned on it because of the sequels being mediocre and bad, and the world has turned its back on Chris Pratt, but it's a fun and enjoyable time and one of the best Jurassic Park movies. Decision to Leave should not have only won Best International Film in the Oscars this year, which it wasn't even nominated for, which is criminal. It should have also have been nominated and won Best Picture. And finally, The Pope's Exorcist is not as bad as people say. It's actually really fun, and I think the idea of pulp and horror comedies is beginning to get lost on modern audiences, which is very sad. So that's my 8 unpopular opinions or hot takes for the video, and from here I'm going to love you and leave you. So let me know what you think of these unpopular opinions, let me know what you think of this video, let me know your unpopular opinions for a possible future video. I read every single comment and reply to as many as possible, and whether it's a film that you have a wildly unpopular opinion on or not, as always, keep watching movies.